we need to start with ourselves.
Right.
If you cannot do it to yourself, how are you expected to do it to others or with others? Right?
I think it's harder to forgive yourself than it is to forgive others.
Yeah, it is, because we are very critical and judgmental about our own behaviors.
You're listening to the Nacho Kids podcast, where we discuss all things step family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy Step Family Coaching Team, Lori and David Sims.
Welcome to episode 251 of the Nacho Kids podcast.
What's up, y'all?
What's up?
So by the time this drops, we're going to be like a quarter of the way through the year already.
Oh my gosh, that's so hard to believe.
I know. Time flies.
Remember the other day, we were looking for something when we were doing a nacho course. And we're like, oh yeah, remember those notes we took a couple months ago? And then we looked back and it had been like 9 months.
I know. Yeah, you swore up and down. It had been that long ago. And I was like, oh yeah, it has.
Yeah. It was crazy because I really thought, it was crazy because I really thought it hadn't been 3 months max.
Yeah. See, just living with me is so much fun that time flies.
Can you hang on while I throw up? All right, folks. David's off the chain today, as you can tell.
You got to be on the chain to be off the chain.
Okay. Well, he is correct. We are coming up on spring and Easter here in the U.S., which means Mother's Day is coming and Father's Day. All the joyful holidays start again.
And don't forget to throw Stepmom's Day in there.
Oh, yeah, Stepmom's Day. We'll talk about all that on another podcast.
Yeah.
We hope you are all having a good day. If you are not having a good day because you are struggling in your blend, you can join the Nacho Kids Academy, where you too can learn to have a good day.
Yeah. I mean, if part of your New Year's resolution was to improve your life, not just your blend, then what actions are you taking? Because it's often very, very difficult to try to just do it yourself.
Yes. And we can help you. That's why we created it.
Yep. It's a complete coaching program to help you improve your life. Because you know what? I'm going to go beyond blending when I talk about this.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because even a friend of yours came to you last week and was talking about how she didn't like the way her biological son, because I don't think she has stepkids, but she didn't like the way her biological son was raising the grandkid. And there's things that goes on in the other house that she didn't agree with and just all this stuff. And then she said, you know what, Lori? There's something you told me a long time ago that really stuck, which is you can't care more than the bio parent. And even though I'm not in a step family, that absolutely applies here. And it has helped me so much to remember that.
Yeah, and she said, and they're not my kids.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, even though it's a blended family thing, it can extend way beyond that.
Yes.
So do yourself a favor. Join the academy and see what it's like. Make your choice. At least you have an informed decision that you can make at that point.
And I'm going to tell you, if you join the academy and you do the Nacho Kids bootcamp, 10 minutes a day for a month, you will see positive changes in your life.
That's right. Do the work.
Yep, you got to do the work.
Yep. It's almost like, hey, if you got up and worked out 10 minutes a day for a month, you'd see a difference.
Yep.
You see changes. So you got to put in the work. It's not just, you can't just pay for a gym membership and get in shape. It just doesn't work that way.
That's right. Okay. Our guest today is actually me and Claudette Chenevert.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is.
I know her.
You know her. We decided a while back to do a podcast on ruminating.
Mm.
And we were finally able to get our schedules in sync where we could record it. And it's really good, y'all. It's really good.
So how long did y'all ruminate on doing a podcast together?
Well, a little while. 2 months. Maybe. But we've been busy. And she's been busy. She's taking care of her little nomies.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So, y'all, this is good. And I'm sure that you will get a lot of information out of this. So listen to it and let us know what you think.
Well, before we dive into that, though, what do you guys call ruminating? I mean, how are you defining it?
As the Webster's Dictionary.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering now, obviously we haven't listened to it yet, because ruminating is not a bad thing, but it's used in a bad context most of the time.
You are correct.
Of course.
Oh my gosh. Rumination can be a cycle of negative thinking, and that is how we are discussing it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we talked about that because I often ruminate on things and I think of it as being a positive thing.
Most people don't ruminate positively.
Again, it's the actual definition of it is just to think deeply about something.
Well,
so
actually, rumination, it can yield benefits if it focuses on correcting errors and goal achievement.
Right. So like many things in life, it's all about which path you decide to use it down. It's a tool, right? Deep thinking is a tool. It can be used for good or bad. So if you're focused on deep thinking about negative things in your life, it is a very, very bad thing to do.
Right. So let's get to listening.
All right.
Hey, Lori, so happy to see you today.
So happy to see you, Claudette.
So I know we had previously talked about issues around rumination, and I thought it would be a great idea for you and I to talk about this in a way to share either our own stories or to share ideas about stepmoms who are dealing with rumination. But before we jump in, just in case someone, I don't know how this could happen, doesn't know about what you do, tell me a little bit about how you got started working with blended families.
Well, my husband and I got married and became a blended family. We did not have what we felt like were unrealistic expectations, but we quickly realized we didn't have a clue what we were doing. All the books we had read did not help us a bit. All those books were, be like a nuclear family. No, that was the problem. We were trying to be like a nuclear family. So long story short, went to a counselor and he kept telling me, Lori, they're not your kids. And I'm like, duh, I know that. And then it hit me, they're not my kids. And once I quit treating them like they were my kids, things got better. And so we created what is now called the Nacho Kids Nacho Parenting method. And we are sharing it with others across the world and helping blended families not go insane or get divorced.
I love that. I think it's a wonderful idea. And yeah, a lot of step families go around pretending to be like a nuclear family. And, that's the problem, I think, right? Being something you're not, pretending to be something you're not.
Yes. And it's hard because I think everybody wants that. I think even the kids kind of want that sense of nuclearality. And if that's not a word, I just made it up. But I think they want that stability and all that stuff, but it's just not realistic. It's like a cat wanting to be a dog. It's not going to happen.
Exactly. I love that analogy. The cat wanting to be a dog. They can pretend all they want. They're never going to be a dog.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can even bark, but they're still not a dog.
Exactly. And so I know that for a lot of stepmoms specifically, and we're going to talk about stepmoms, the sense of ruminating is a big issue. So before we go too deep into this, I'd love to hear what you think rumination is. So let's define ruminating. I think
So,
that's a great place to start.
yes, because a lot of people may not understand what it is, really. So, ruminating involves continuously thinking about the same thoughts, which are typically sad or dark. They're not happy thoughts. This habit of dwelling on negative experiences, feelings, or thoughts can be detrimental to your mental health. I worked for a company and, it was garbage in, garbage out. You do programming and stuff like that. And it's the same thing. If you're constantly focused on the negative, you're not going to see the positive. It's the same thing with if I'm constantly focused on something that happened 10 years ago, I can't go forward when I'm looking in the past. But it's easy to do. And one of the things that we like to talk about is how your brain works. And a lot of times your brain does these things thinking it's going to help you. If I remind Lori of this that happened, she'll make sure it doesn't happen again. But then with that comes guilt and regret. And it's things you can't change. So you have to work on yourself with your mind and recognize when you're having these thoughts, and it's okay to have them, but don't let them spiral and don't let them get out of control. I've got a story that I joke that on my deathbed, I'm going to remember feeling bad about letting one of Jackson's friends pick which cake we cut at Jackson's birthday party. We had two cakes, the two different Spider-Man cakes. And so I asked the kid, which one should we cut? No big deal. Well, Jackson was not happy with that. You let Levi decide which cake to cut. I didn't think anything about it. But he has made such a big deal about it. And it bothers me as a parent that thought comes in my head and I have to struggle to make it go away because I kick into, I'm a bad parent. This affected my son in a negative way. He felt like I didn't love him. It ruined his birthday. Now, of course, with David and Jackson both being button pushers, it has since turned into not only did I let this kid pick which cake to cut, but I let the kid open Jackson's presents. That's how they've spun it. But it does no good. There is no positive outcome from me thinking about that.
Yeah, I love that story. Thank you for sharing because, a lot of times you're right. We think of past events, the what ifs or the I should have done things differently. Or if I remember when I go to work and drive back home, I'd have these scripts in my head. And I'd imagine, I would create these imaginary scenarios in my head of what would happen once I got home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be driving and I would work up so much anxiety or even anger and frustration before I got home so that when I opened the door, the kids were like, what did we do? They hadn't done a single thing except what was inside my head.
Yes.
And that was like reliving some of the comments they had made, maybe reliving or rehashing some of the scenarios that had happened, like not wanting to pick up their clothes off their floor and going over and over and over and in making these scenes inside my head. And it came to the point where I hated driving back home because of all these stories I would create in my head. And it made our lives miserable because every time I walked in the door, I was reaching for nothing that actually happened,
right,
except for what was going on inside my own head.
I'm glad that you brought up driving because I think that's when most of this happens for people. You know, they say an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Mhm.
When you're driving, especially the same route over and over, you're not even paying attention to driving except for making sure you don't hit anybody. But your mind just starts kind of going. And you have all that time to get yourself psyched up of what's going to be bad when you get home. And then it's like when David and I were starting to do the podcast originally, we couldn't do it because it brought back too many bad memories. And I would ruminate on those. And so I had to learn to stop ruminating for us to be able to do this stuff. And the same with the Facebook group.
Yeah.
I had to learn not to read other people's problems. And then it triggered the memories in my head of what happened with us. And then me start ruminating on that. I'd be mad at somebody else's kids. Or I'd be mad at my kids for what somebody else's stepkids did.
Exactly. So transferring the situation to other people that had nothing to do with what was going on. Right. Yeah. And I love that you talked about how the brain works. And the brain tends to want to protect us and look for the issues that you need to look out for. And the analogy is a saber-toothed tiger who's going to attack you. There's no saber-toothed tiger. So we're okay. We're safe. But it's also being aware of that natural occurrence that happens and to say to that mindset, hey, I'm safe. I'm going to take care of it. You don't need to remind me of all the stuff that's been going on. I'm going to figure it out without having to rehash it.
Right.
Yeah. And the thing is, the other thing I'm thinking of rumination was that the times other than driving, the times that it occurs, comes up, the shower, but the shower, and also when I am tired or exhausted.
Yes.
Which ties into being aware of what is actually going on around you. Is it really the thoughts that are in your head? Are they accurate? Are they true? Or is it because of something else? You're exhausted, you're tired, you need some food.
Or you're just in a funk. Some days you're just in a funk. And then you start thinking about this stuff and you're not going to get out of your funk when you're ruminating.
Nope.
And I don't know about you, Claudette, but I talk to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say out loud, Lori, stop. This happened in the past. There's nothing you can do to change it. Let's change our focus. And changing my focus may be as simple as going to do laundry, playing a mindless game on my phone, listening to a podcast, something to distract you where you're not sitting there in that pit of misery.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you shared this because, again, it's becoming aware of what's happening in your head. Mm-hmm. And yes, I do talk to myself. I often tell my clients, how do you talk to your best friends? Do you tell them, what a jerk you are, like, I can't believe you did something like this. Mm-hmm. Or do you tell your best friend, hey, listen, it really is terrible what's happening. Let's do something to help you get out of this. Hug yourself, like, I'm going to give you a hug. And so those are things that I think to get out of that rumination is to treat yourself as you would your best friend. Now, hopefully you treat your best friend really nice. Mm-hmm. But to treat yourself like your best friend. Because, we are our worst critic. And I think, again, that comes in with focusing on all the things we've done wrong in our lives, mm-hmm. and telling ourselves the most terrible things you don't even tell your best friend or anyone else, but you have no qualms of saying it to yourself. And so I think it's really important to take a moment to think about, okay, how am I going to address this? Is it if I process this over and over again, is it going to be helpful? Is it going to improve the situation? Is it going to be something that's going to make it better in the long term? Or should I just say, hey, let's put this in the closet? Or I like the filing cabinet analogy. For me, I use the filing cabinet. I would put stuff in the filing cabinet, close the door, depending on what it is. I may even lock it
Mm-hmm.
and not open it ever. And that's it.
Well, I love how you talk about how we treat ourselves versus a friend. We're mean to ourselves. We're downright hateful at times. And I know in one of the courses in the academy or the challenges in the academy, we talk about that. And it's the Change Your Stinking Thinking challenge. And I love it. I absolutely love it. But one of the things is if you went on a job interview and the person says, describe yourself to me. Are you going to say, well, I think I'm lazy, unproductive, unorganized, just a piece of crap, and say the things that you say to yourself? Do you think you would get hired? No. And I often ask myself, is this coming from a place of love or criticism? Yes, it's important to be able to acknowledge things from a standpoint of I'm not perfect, but that can come from a hateful place or a place of, Lori, you're doing good. You just could work better on these things. Like you said, like you would talk to a friend. If I talk to you like I talk to myself, we would not be friends. I guarantee it. You'd be like, you are a mean beep.
I would say, okay, Lori, we need to have a conversation about language here. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot talk to me like this, which reminds me, it's a way of setting boundaries as well, right?
Yes, within yourself.
Within yourself. In my book of the Stepmom's Book of Boundaries, there is a part in that book where I talk about making sure you set boundaries for yourself. Yourself meaning, what is it acceptable to you to do or say that you are going to be okay with living with? And so rumination is one of those, right? I am not going to allow myself to ruminate on things that I cannot change, that are past. And that's a boundary. And
Yes.
when I see myself going down that path of thinking about terrible things that I wish I had done differently or that the kids did that come up, I have this boundary where it's a stop.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go there. And I use the word stop, like seriously stop, with a big red sign in my brain.
Yes.
So I visually see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, okay, what can you do instead? If I need to apologize, I will. Because sometimes when we ruminate, it's a regret of something I'm going to use the word should have done, but we didn't. That keeps coming up.
Right.
Therefore, if that is the case, ask yourself, what can I do in order to squash that thought and make it better? So it could be you need to apologize. You apologize to that person in question, or you even apologize to yourself.
Yes.
Forgive yourself.
And that's one of the weirdest things is to apologize to yourself.
Yep.
Because like the cake incident with Jackson. Now, I know he's picking on me, but I probably will be on my deathbed if I don't understand the tools to help me with this ruminating thing. So I can apologize to Jackson, but I also feel like I should apologize to myself. And we don't think about that. And I think if we apologize to ourselves, that is helping us to let it go.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a big focus on forgive but again, apologize, forgive yourself. We need to start with ourselves.
Right.
If you cannot do it to yourself, how are you expected to do it to others or with others? Right?
I think it's harder to forgive yourself than it is to forgive others.
Yeah, it is, because we are very critical and judgmental about our own behaviors. It could be because of how you were raised, the stories you heard as a kid, the messages you internalize, whether they're accurate or not,
Hmm.
right? As kids, we tend to internalize messages that may have something to do with the actual circumstances, and oftentimes they're not, because as children we tend to be more self-centered and the world revolves around ourselves,
Hmm.
and then we learn that it doesn't, and then we have to learn to be more with others. And so learning to forgive ourselves and to apologize to us, to
Hmm.
ourselves, about things we said or did helps to diminish. I'm not going to say eliminate, because I don't think we can totally eliminate rumination. One is, there's still some research and studies being done as to why women tend to be the ruminators more than men.
Because men think about
So,
sex.
and so they have no time, they have no room in their brains for ruminating, right?
Exactly. Because they're always thinking about sex. Yes. And to our listeners, you know I'm right. You know I'm right. They're not worried about whatever happened 3 minutes ago or 30 years ago. They're thinking, how can I get her to have sex with me?
I agree. And even, as you think, as you're saying this, not that Bernard is talking or thinking about sex at this moment, but there are points or times when he said, "Are you still thinking about this? Like, seriously? That
Yeah.
was like months ago, and you're still thinking about this." And
Hmm.
so, like, he's shocked. He cannot understand why I'm going over this kind of thinking.
Right.
And so it's just a male, female, masculine, feminine, whatever terms you want to use, that we're not the same. We're not thinking the same.
Right. It's the men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing.
Yeah, exactly. And and it tends to be pretty accurate when you read through all that way of interacting with one another.
Hmm.
It tends to be pretty accurate.
One thing I don't think people realize, Claudette, is what the effects of ruminating are. We know it increases anxiety and depression, but
Yep.
it can impair your problem solving skills
Yes.
because you're so focused on these negative aspects. It decreases your ability to solve problems effectively or to see potential solutions because you're focused on the negative. And it can
Yes.
also interfere with your concentration and memory.
Yes. And so one of the things I like to mention is that, when you are caught in fear, when your emotions hijacked your thinking process, your logic is out the door.
Right.
Your logic isn't kicking in. The logic being asking yourself, does this make sense? Is this something I can do something about? Is it something I can control or not? Is it actually what is going on? Like, am I making up some of or filling in some of the gaps in there, and making assumptions? Because sometimes when we ruminate, we add or embellish. I don't know if the word embellish is a proper word for this, but or create more chaos inside those stories than there actually was.
Well, and then if you study the memory, 60% of your memories are not accurate.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you're taking this instance of something that happened that bothered you. You're adding this stuff to it without realizing it, more than likely.
Yeah.
So you're ruminating about something that probably isn't even all the way true. I tell you, it will blow your mind to think about this, because you're like, wait a minute, what? 60% of my memories are not true? It's true. 60% of your memories are not true. And so once you realize that part of it, you can kind of, I guess, dissect it, get to the root of it.
Yeah.
And examine why you're feeling this way. What's making you spin out of control is what I call it, on this thought. And when you ask yourself, is it true? Well, yeah, it's true. I know it's true. Are you sure it's true? What do you really know is true about that situation? And you'll start questioning everything.
Yeah, there is an excellent book that I read many, many years ago. Actually, it started out with a research paper, The 7 Sins of Memory.
I've got that book.
Yeah.
It makes you think that your life's a lie.
It actually helps you to question, is this actually true or not? And
Right.
what part of it is true or not?
Right.
And a lot of times, the words we use to identify a situation or a problem can create a bigger problem or lesser problem.
Right.
The example that is typically used is a car crash or an accident, a car accident. Whether you say the car hit the other car, the speed at which it hit will be lower than if you said the car crashed into the other car.
Or slammed into
it. The speed at which you associate the crash with will be higher. And so this is the same with your relationship with your stepkids. My stepkids are annoying, or my stepkids are the worst little monsters ever. You will see those children in a different life, in a different way.
Yeah.
So the words you use are very important to help you see the world according to what's going on. And this is what the 7 sins of memory talk about. You know, how you portray or see the world, the words you use will be accurate to the point of what you're saying, and not necessarily what is being out there.
Right. And we underestimate the power of words.
Yeah.
That's why when you get up in the morning, if you can say 3 positive things to yourself, it can be the same 3 positive things or things you're thankful for. Some people may say, I'm strong, I'm loved. I can't think of anything else. I'm beautiful.
Yeah.
And then some people may need to think more of, I'm thankful for a good job. I'm thankful for a car to get to my job. I'm thankful for my house. But those are all positive things. And then if you can do that before you go, it sets a precedence for your day.
Yeah.
And then if you can do it before you go to sleep, it helps you sleep better. This is proven.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I wrote this in a journal. I would write every single night what I was grateful for at the end of the day. And even there were days where I said, I'm just grateful that I have a bed to sleep in. Because of all the things that happened during that day, finding something positive, that was what I could find positive in my day.
Right.
Now, no matter how hard you feel your life is or how difficult and challenging it is, I'm going to use almost guarantee you there is something positive you can find in your day.
And I'm telling you, if you cannot find something positive in your life or your day, message me. I will help you find something positive in your life or your day.
Absolutely.
Because there is always something to be thankful and grateful for.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree with you 100%. And so as we wrap up here, what would be the message we want and we're specifically talking with stepmoms because we know that stepmoms are the ones who tend to struggle more with rumination. What are the things you'd like for them to take away about rumination?
That it's not healthy. It can cause a multitude of issues in relationships with yourself, with your partners, with your kids, with your stepkids, and that you can't control the things that happen that you're ruminating about, but you can control how often you ruminate about it. And so if you are one of these people that you need 5 minutes a day to ruminate, give yourself 5 minutes a day. Don't let it take your whole day, but focus more on putting positive in your life. And that includes having friends around you that are more positive. I have a friend, God love her. I cannot talk to her on the phone when she's in the car. She stresses me out screaming at everybody driving. And then I come home and I'm mad. But you don't realize these external things, how much they affect you. And so if you find yourself ruminating and you're feeling negative and you're kind of down in the dumps, talk to yourself. Lori, stop.
Yep.
What are 3 things good about Lori? That's a really good way to cut them off.
Yeah.
Or one thing too that helps me, Claudette, is an anchor thought.
Okay, yes. What is your anchor thought?
My anchor thought is a picture of Jackson in a bathtub when he was 2 years old, that there's bubbles everywhere and his cute little face just popping up out of them.
Oh.
That is my anchor thought. If I start feeling like my mind is going somewhere I don't want it to, I picture that picture in my head and it makes me happy and it allows me to change my thought process and focus on something else.
Wow, that's wonderful. So for me, I don't have a picture as an anchor thought, but it's a mantra that I did when I was doing yoga. And for some reason, that mantra has, whatever it is, it just instantly calms me. And that mantra is Satnam.
Setnam?
Satnam. Like sitting,
Satnam.
S-A-T. Yep.
Okay.
Satnam. And that mantra just calms me down. It refocuses me. And it just happens to do this. And sometimes it could be for whoever is listening here, whatever works for you, use it. Like
You can come up with something silly.
Exactly. It could be something silly. So the other thing that when I feel like rumination is coming on and I'm feeling like really anxious and my thoughts are hijacking me, I imagine there's this little gremlin on my shoulder, like this ugly monster sitting on my shoulder, whispering all this garbage in my ear. And so what I'll do is I'll just flick it off my shoulder and say,
like a
go
booger.
away. Like a booger. And so I will literally take my finger and flick it off my shoulder. And that's another way for me to, that's gone. So there are different ways of, dealing with that rumination, and you just need to figure it out what is good for you and what works for you. Like for you is that picture of Jackson with his face out of the bubble. I can just envision it. It must be amazing. I mean, it's so cute. For me, it's that mantra or like flicking off that booger off my shoulder, whatever it is.
Well, I love the fact of the flicking because that takes a physical action to help you get out of your mental status.
Yeah.
And I guess my mantra thing is out devil in Jesus.
Okay. Good.
And I'll be like, out devil in Jesus. And people laugh at me when I say it, but I've noticed that the people around me, they'll start saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something that makes them think, stop the negative, Do the
bring in the
positive.
positive.
Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And so, I think what's important in this, all of this here, is that rumination doesn't have to be your license. You don't have to be stuck in it. It's going to happen. And if it does, just be aware of how you can stop it. Stop rumination in its tracks. And you may need to practice and do this in multiple different ways, try different tactics. It's not something that came to me instantly. I didn't even realize I was ruminating when I'm driving in the car, getting in the house, and being upset to the kids who had done absolutely nothing wrong except being there. And my brain is going in creating all these scenarios. Read about your mindset. I think mindset is so important
Yes.
in helping to make rumination like squish it or to shrink it
Yes.
to a place where you say, oh, here I go again. I'm ruminating again.
Yes. Being aware
Right?
of it. Yes.
So saying to yourself, oh, there I go again. I'm ruminating. I gotta, okay, what am I going to do? So those are skills to practice, skills to tell yourself, what am I going to use today to help deal with my rumination?
Right.
And sometimes just calling a friend, like saying, hey, Lori, I'm ruminating again. What can you do? Can you help me? Can I just talk this over with you and get rid of it? Sometimes that's the best solution as well.
Yes. And I think it's like everything else. Once you become aware of it and become more deliberate in your thinking, you're breaking a bad habit and creating a new one. So it's like the guy, I always mess up his name, Nick Vujicic or something, the guy with no arms, no legs, but with a chicken foot.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He's a motivational speaker. I guarantee you he doesn't ruminate.
Probably
And if he
not.
does, it's briefly. You look at these people that they're just always so positive, and like they work at Chick-fil-A, they're so positive. You know what I'm saying? Those people have learned the tools to help them not to ruminate.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that you shouldn't be aware of things that happened in the past that weren't positive, but we're saying it does no good to dwell on those things.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. Now, if you can use it and say, the next time you're in a situation like that, get Jackson 2 birthday cakes. Well, God forbid, don't let somebody else pick which cake to cut. Yeah, I learned a lesson with that. But I don't need to keep wallowing in that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I love what you're saying is that whenever a situation comes up that you may have repeated from the past, instead of saying, oh, was I ever terrible? What did I do with this? Look at it and think about, how can I make this a more positive experience? How can I change this so that I don't feel bad about myself, or that I don't have regrets, or that I feel like I'm a failure?
Yes, we need to reminisce instead of ruminate.
I love that. Reminisce instead of ruminate.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Reminisce instead of ruminate.
Excellent. So, if anyone wants to reach out to you, Lori, where do they go?
Go to nachokids.com or
Excellent.
on Instagram, it's Nacho Kids. You can find us anywhere. And what about you, Claudette? Where can people find you?
Well, for me, if people want to find me, just Google Stepmom Coach and you will find me. Or you can also do the Step Family Summit, because I do the Step Family Summit as well.
Yes, and that is awesome. And it won't be long for that to come out again this year.
Yeah, in September. So if you are wondering where to get some great information, as well as Lori's, you can go to the stepfamilysummit.com and check out our summit.
Yes. And if you want to do the Change Your Stinking Thinking Challenge, join the Nacho Kids Academy. I'm telling you, 30 days, it'll change your life.
Yes, absolutely. So you have plenty of tools, people, to do some better thinking and stop ruminating.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Some people enjoy ruminating even if it's not a positive experience.
Not me.
Because they believe that by ruminating, they'll gain insight into their life or a problem. But most of the time, ruminating is things that we cannot control.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's that negativity bias that we have, that people default toward negativity in many cases.
Right.
And then you'll ruminate on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I have. I don't know anybody that really hasn't, but maybe there's somebody out there.
And it's like everything else. The more you do it, the more you're going to continue to do it.
Well, it's a spiral. You know, the spiraling out of control.
Right, which is what we talked about.
Yeah. You know, we talked before in the academy with people how you can spiral the other direction. It's actually something you can spiral in a positive direction. But the rumination thing, it often doesn't serve you well. If it's going down a negative path, it's usually not. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't think about things that are negative in your life. If your outcome is trying to be, let's examine this so that we can learn from it and not repeat the bad behavior or not repeat whatever it is that got us in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So ruminate on that. All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to join us next week when we'll ruminate about something else.
No, we're not ruminating anymore.
And remember, life is good
when you nacho.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids Podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.